In preparation for co-leading a pilgrimage for women to Italy last month, I spent some time getting to know Saint Catherine of Siena and Saint Clare of Assisi. These two female saints were quite formidable in their passion and love for God, and what that meant for their own souls and those around them. In Ilia Delio's book, Clare of Assisi, I found a snippet Clare wrote in a letter to her sister Agnes. O most noble queen, gaze upon him, consider him, contemplate him, as you desire to imitate him. Of course, she was talking about God. 4 words leapt off the page for me. Gaze, consider, contemplate, and imitate. These 4 dynamics are compelling invitations in my relationship with God and, if followed, could lead to much fruit that lasts, spoken of in John 15. I'm Jem Fadling, and it's time for I Can Do That. Let's take a brief look at each of the 4 dynamics. Gaze, consider, contemplate, and imitate. I'm going to share a scripture for each one and then just a few thoughts. So let's start with gaze. From Psalm 27:4. One thing I ask from the Lord, and this only do I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze upon the beauty of the Lord and to seek him in his temple. Gazing feels like a lost art. When was the last time you actually gazed at someone or something? When I ponder the idea of gazing, the first image that comes to my mind is the way a new parent holds and looks into the eyes of their newborn. The inexplicable wonder of a fresh, new little being. I remember staring into the eyes of each of my sons as newborns, and there's an intensity to this kind of seeing, a taking in, a connection. This verse talks about gazing on the beauty of the Lord. What might that look like in everyday life? This gazing is a posture of the heart, a stillness in God's presence, a beholding. And the wonder here is that we are simply mirroring back the loving gaze that is already being directed at us. How might gazing become a part of your connection with God? Let's move on to consider. When I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you have set in place, what is mankind that you are mindful of them, human beings that you care for them? That's Psalm 8:3 and 4. David is considering that which he sees with his eyes, the grand landscape of the universe. He can't fathom a being who can create the heavens, moon, and stars, and then would find a place in his heart for human beings as well. It's a moment of overwhelm and praise. To consider is to think carefully about. What might that look like for you to think carefully about what God has made? And then add to that beautiful and humbling idea that God made and cares for you. Consider that and allow it to lead you to praise. Contemplate. Ephesians 1:18. I pray that the eyes of your heart may be enlightened in order that you may know the hope to which he has called you, the riches of his glorious inheritance in his holy people. To contemplate is to look at attentively and thoughtfully. And I'd like to draw a line from contemplation directly to the word enlightened in this verse. Contemplation is one way our hearts might be enlightened toward hope. I'd like to think that contemplation is the next movement beyond consider. Consider may be in our head, which is wonderful, while contemplation moves us to our heart, also wonderful. So allow the eyes of your heart to open wider to the riches of God. And finally, imitate. Matthew 11:28. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. If you've been following Unhurried Living for long, you won't be surprised by my choice of this verse. There are many ways for us to follow the example of Jesus. The gospel is full of stories of the ways Jesus modeled for us an abundant and compassionate life. One area in which I can always use some encouragement is around hurry. Jesus invites us to come, especially the weary and burdened. Come. Jesus said he is gentle and humble in heart. These are qualities to receive and then imitate, especially in this increasingly distracted, anxious, and lonely culture. Let's imitate Jesus and become people of peace, a soft place for others to land when they are in our presence. Rest for your souls is much needed, and I'm sure you feel that as well. Did you notice that all these terms, gaze, consider, contemplate, and imitate, are in relationship with God? We don't enact these verbs in a vacuum or all by ourselves. We are gazing upon God, considering God's vast goodness, contemplating God's generosity through hope, and imitating the ways of Jesus. What a wonderful set of invitations to greater connection to our loving Creator. I hope you rewind and listen to these again, looking for ways to make them a part of your spiritual practice. So here's your I can do that for this week. Pray, ponder, or journal. Which of these 4 terms strikes you today? What connection between the words would you like to explore? How might this dynamic process become a part of your soul care toolkit? Remember, you're making your way forward one small, simple, and gracious step at a time.